Hey, what's going on everybody? Commander Crane here, and we are back with another modern deck tech, and today we're going to be talking about $20 Gruul Hexproof. This is a very, very cool list. I think this is the third or fourth $20 deck that we've done on the channel. I believe it's actually number 4. So before we hop into the video, let me know at the end of the video, what do you think about the list? Is there any card that I should have included? What would you do to upgrade the deck overall if you had more than $20, if it was $50 or you didn't have a budget? Just let me know in the comment section below, as well as if you have any suggestions for upcoming videos. So all right, $20 Gruul Hexproof. So huge shout out to DVT Habit in the comment section below. I don't remember what video it was, but they had asked if I could do a Gruul Regenerate aggro deck. So I kind of was looking at a lot of the creatures that have Regenerate. And I'm going to be honest with you, not a lot of them are super good for the most part that have Regenerate. But, there's a couple of very solid ones that do have Regenerate. And I got to thinking like, okay, what if I did this? What if I did that? I tried to come up with a new deck. So a while ago, we had done a $50 Gruul aggro deck on the channel, and I wanted it to kind of be different than that one, because that one was like a Bloodbraid Elf, like Cascade, like just aggro deck, and I wanted to do something different, and I think we found something that's different enough that's still very, very cool. So let's go ahead and hop into it here. So obviously Regenerate. So we're playing Experiment 1. So we kind of played the Experiment 1 package, which is 4 Experiment 1, 4 Pelt Collector, and 4 Dryad Militant. Obviously Experiment 1 and Pelt Collector, very, very similar, except Pelt Collector, when it gets bigger, it gets Trample, and then with Experiment 1, you can remove 2 counters to regenerate it, which is pretty sweet. Dryad Militant works extremely well with both of these, because we play one of those on turn 1, and then maybe we can even go turn 2, play another one, and then play a Dryad Militant, and trigger both of them, which is great. As well as Dryad Militant, exiling instant or sorceries that would be put in a graveyard from anywhere is great, especially against like the Murktide decks. It's pretty good, just because if they consider something to the yard, or they cast like anything, it just goes into exile, which is pretty sweet. So kind of keeps those cards keeps them out of the graveyard, which is pretty sweet. So definitely a big fan of Dryad Militant. So let's hop on to the next slide here. So this is what I would say is the bread and butter of the deck, the very quality 3-drops. So we're playing 4 Troll Ascetic, 4 Witchstalker, and 4 Dungrove Elder. So obviously we are Gruul Hexproof, and these are the cards that exemplify that. So Troll Ascetic, 3/2 for 3, can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponents control, also known as Hexproof. Then we can tap 1 into green to regenerate it. So it's kind of like a mini Thrun the Last Troll, and it's just great. So we'll see why we're playing like Hexproof here in a minute. But essentially, it's a really hard creature to kill, and that's kind of the incentive that we're going for here. If our opponent's playing like Lightning Bolts and Unholy Heats and that kind of thing, it's very hard for them to interact with our creatures, so we just take over the game with just a bunch of decent sized creatures. And then so we're playing 4 Troll Ascetic, and then we have 4 Witchstalker as well, 3/3 for 3 with Hexproof. Whenever an opponent casts a blue or black spell during your turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it, which is pretty sweet. So if our opponents are end step using Orcish Bowmaster, we get a trigger with Witchstalker there. If our opponents counter any of our spells, we get a trigger there. So Witchstalker is my personal favorite of these 3 cards for sure. But I would say the most unique one that not a lot of people have really played is Dungrove Elder. So it's XX for 3 Hexproof. Its power and toughness is equal to the number of forests you control, which, spoiler alert, we're playing a decent amount of forests. So Dungrove Elder, it's not going to get, it can get really, really big, but it's not going to get gigantic. Most of the time, we're looking for it to be like a 4/4, maybe even a 5/5 if we're lucky. Again, it's just another Hexproof creature. Personally, I like to lead with Witchstalker in most matchups. Obviously, it kind of depends, but I'm definitely a big fan of Dungrove Elder for sure. Definitely a very, very cool card. I've always been a big fan of this card for a very, very long time. So next slide here, we're going to talk about our last few creatures that we have. We're playing 4 Bonecrusher Giants and 2 Burning Tree Shamans. Everybody kind of knows what Bonecrusher Giant is. Burning Tree Shaman's kind of a unique one though. 3/4 for 3. Whenever a player plays an activated ability that isn't a mana ability, Burning Tree Shaman deals 1 damage to that player. So what does that mean? That means when our opponents activate 1 rings, they're going to take damage. When they crack their fetch lands, they're going to take damage. That's kind of the main reason that we're playing it. Past that, it's just a 3/4 for 3 with pretty good stats. It dodges Lightning Bolt, which is pretty nice. That's ultimately why I decided to play Burning Tree Shaman. It's also just a cool card. Like you never really see this card very much anymore. So I just really wanted to play Burning Tree Shaman just because it is a sweet card. So our last slide here is kind of, they're 1-drops, but it'll make sense here. We're playing 4 Rancor and 4 Lightning Bolt. Rancor is great because all of our creatures have Hexproof, or at least all of our main creatures have Hexproof. So that way we'll be able to just put the Rancor on, they can't kill it in response, and then if it does die, if it trades or anything like that, we just get to grab it right back, which is pretty sweet. And then Lightning Bolt's Lightning Bolt, pretty self-explanatory. I also forgot to mention this, which makes sense now. We are an Obosh deck. I totally forgot to include that. That's why we're only playing 1s, 3s. We're not playing any 5s, though. We're not playing any 5s, but that's why we're playing all 1s and 3s. We have Obosh in our sideboard that we can grab at any time. And then obviously it's great because all of our sources will deal double damage. So if we have our Witch Stalker with 2 Rancors on it, that's 14 damage if Obosh is in play. So I wanted to include that as well here. So all right, that's our entire main board, except for the lands that we got to talk about here, which the lands are going to be funny, and you're going to have to bear with me on this. So okay, so these are our dual lands that we're playing. We're playing 4 Game Trail, 4 Cinderglade, and 4 Wooded Ridgeline. So Game Trail, it is not a mountain or a forest or a mountain forest, but it is an untapped dual land which can be very relevant for us. We're playing pretty much all mountains and forests besides the game trails themselves, pretty much. So they're gonna come in untapped most of the time, which is nice. Sometimes we're gonna need untapped duels, so that's why we were playing the 4 game trails. And Cinderglade and Wooded Ridgeline is pretty much because we're playing Dungrove Elder, and also because we're on a budget, so it kind of double dips a little bit. Obviously Cinderglade is better than Wooded Ridgeline just because it can enter untap and it has the mountain forest typing, which they're really cheap because they've been reprinted a lot, and we're also playing a lot of basics, so it's pretty reasonable that after turn 3 that this is going to come into play untapped. So definitely a big fan of Cinderglade. Wooded Ridgeline is because we needed another type for the most part. That's pretty much why we're playing that. That's pretty much it. So, and it's also cheaper than the snow version of it as well, so that's also why I played this one. And then rounding out our lands, we're playing 1 Kessig Wolfrun. I'm a huge fan of Kessig Wolfrun. Any Gruul deck that I build in Modern, I'm always playing 1 Kessig Wolfrun. Definitely a big fan of this card. And again, it's also great because all of our main creatures have Hexproof, so we can activate the Wolfrun on them, and there's not really anything our opponents are going to be able to do about it. We can take damage technically from our Burning Tree Shaman, but that's almost never going to happen. But do just keep that in mind, though. That is something that could happen. And then our lands here, we're playing 8 forests and 1 mountain. We're not playing a ton of red sources or red cards. We are playing them, obviously, but we already have 12 dual lands, and then we've got the mountains, so it's kind of that's generally enough. Once we have 1 red source, we are ready to go. And then obviously is our spicy basic land of the day. I decided to play the 7th edition white Borderlands, mostly for 2 reasons. One, because I've never featured these before and I love the artwork. The second reason being, the whole point is to tilt our opponent, okay? We're playing all these hexproof creatures. They can't kill any of our creatures. We're putting Rancors on them, and on top of that, we're playing white border basic lands. So just that above, it brings them over the top. They get frustrated and they'll just scoop early, which is that's kind of what we're going for here. So I know it's a deeper meaning. So your opponent will either be frustrated that we're playing the white border basics, or they're gonna be like, wow, those are some sick basics, and they're gonna love the deck, which either way is a win-win for us. So I kind of had to mention that little bit of lore in there. So all right, that's the entire main board, but don't go anywhere. We still have to talk about our sideboard as well as some upgrade options. So like I do with most of our $20 decks, I just tell you what I'm playing in the sideboard instead of giving a generic idea, just because most of the time these are the best options. So sideboard, we're playing 4 Flame Slash, 4 Run Afoul, 4 Stone of Erech, 2 Beast Within. And then obviously the 1 Obosh the Prey Piercer, which for those who don't know, Obosh says you can only play cards with odd converted mana cost. So that's why we're only playing 1s and 3s. So 4 Flame Slash, it's essentially just an extra removal spell for us. 1 red sorcery deals 4 damage to target creature. Just a great card in general. 4 Run Afoul, 1 green instant. Target player sacrifices a creature with flying. Pretty much takes out Murktide Regents. You can also take out Darcy's if you need to, but that's essentially the main reason that we're playing Run Afoul, just because Is It Murktide is a very popular deck in the metagame. Then we're also playing 4 Stone of Erech, which is a fantastic against all the scam decks. It says if a creature would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, it's exiled instead. And then I think you can also crack it to draw a card, which I know you don't do that mode very often. The main reason is just if our opponents are going to try to scam us. Turn 1, Stone of Erech, bam! You're not scamming us at all. And it's also really good against Living End as well, just because if they go to the graveyard, they go to exile. So also had to include that. And then we're also playing 2 Beast Within. It's a 2 and a green instant, destroy any permanent, and its controller gets a 3/3. So obviously Murktide Regent, we can go and take those out. If our opponent's playing Tron, we blow up one of their Tron lands. Yeah, we give them a 3/3, but all of our creatures are bigger than theirs most of the time, so it doesn't even matter. We can also blow up our own permanent if we're like in a pinch. You know, if we blow up our own land and then we can swing for lethal or something like that. Doesn't happen a lot, but it is something that could happen. And then obviously we have the one Obosh. So that's our entire sideboard, and we still have to talk about upgrade options, which obviously it's a $20 deck. There are a ton of different upgrades we could do for this deck, but this is what I would personally do. So I would upgrade the 3-drops a little bit. So I would play cards like Klothys, which Klothys is fantastic. That's one of the main 3-drops I would consider including in the deck. I also really like Ronus the Indomitable because it's indestructible. You could also even play like Steelleaf Champion if you really wanted to. Old Growth Troll. I'm trying to think, like Cemetery Prowler. I don't even know. There's like 1,000 different, you know, like 3-drops that you could put in this deck for the most part, but I would recommend upgrading those a bit. I do like the hexproof creatures, but I would say some of them don't really hold up quite as well. And then switch to Collected Company. Coco is a fantastic card, obviously. Being able to put in multiple big 3-drops is an extremely good rate. So if you have your Cocos lying around, just go ahead and cut the Obosh, and I would throw those in there. That can even be your only 4-drop, quite frankly, if you really wanted to. But yes, definitely a big fan of Collected Company. And then obviously upgrading the land base. The land base is obviously extremely clunky. Pretty much any dual land that has the typing is better than the Wooded Ridgeline or whatever the common one is. Any of them is better than that. Like Sheltered Thicket's better. Obviously Stomping Ground. Man, I don't even know. I can't think of all the ones that have the typing on that. But anyways, they're all better than that one. So I would really just upgrade the lands. You could even put in some Lair of the Hydras if you really wanted to. You could put in a Boseiju. If you have a Boseiju laying around, you could throw those in. Heck, you could even throw in Treetop Village if you really wanted to. It doesn't work as well with Dungrove Elder, so kind of keep that in mind. But overall, there's definitely a lot of upgrade options. You've got a couple different avenues you could go to. If you wanted to play more like you could still keep doing the Obosh version. You could do like a mono green version if you wanted to. You could go into like a mid-range Ponza list if you really wanted to. It really just depends on what you'd like to do once you kind of build this deck, and then you just kind of go from there. So, all right, well, we're at the end of the video here. I'd like to thank everybody for watching this video. Let me know what you think about this deck in the comment section below. Also, let me know if you do end up building this. I pretty much have the entire deck, so who knows, maybe I'll end up playing it on camera one of these days at my local F&M. So, I'm Commander Crane. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.